It's John chapter 8. I'll be reading verses 31 through 43. John 8, 31 through 43. Hear the word of the Lord. So Jesus said to the Jews who had believed in him, "If you abide in my word, you are truly my disciples, and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." They answered him, "We are offspring of Abraham and have never been enslaved to anyone. How is it that you say you will become free?" Jesus answered them, "Truly, truly, I say to you, everyone who practices sin is a slave to sin. The slave does not remain in the house forever. The Son remains forever. So if the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed. I know that you are offspring of Abraham. Yet you seek to kill me because my words find no place in you. I speak of what I have seen with my Father, and you do what you have heard from your father." They answered him, "Abraham is our father." Jesus said to them, "If you were Abraham's children, you would be doing the works Abraham did. But now you seek to kill me, a man who has told you the truth that I heard from God. This is not what Abraham did. You are doing the works your father did." They said to him, "We were not born of sexual immorality. We have one Father, even God." Jesus said to them, "If God were your Father, you would love me, for I came from God and I am here. I came not of my own accord, but he sent me. Why do you not understand what I say? It is because you cannot bear to hear my word."
Well, in recent days, many of us have heard the stories of senseless evil, faraway stories in Charlotte, Colorado, Utah. But just 2 weeks ago, right here, in our own metro. And it's very personal for me and for my family. We've spent all summer with 4 families from Annunciation on our baseball team. Saw them last weekend. About as close to home as one of these mass shootings has come for me, for us. All of our friends had kids in the room when the gunman opened fire, and one precious little girl, friend of my daughter's, shot 3 times. She's doing okay. All of our Annunciation friends know well the students who died, and many more who were injured. And what's been so unsettling for me, for us, for them, has been the sheer senselessness of it. Shooting up a room of children. It is profound wickedness, like the devil himself, to take aim at children, whether in Egypt or Bethlehem or abortion clinics or Annunciation Church. And in such times, sensible people do ask about motives, rationale. It's understandable, but it's not always so easy. Someone read aloud to me some of the gunman's words from Annunciation, and I don't know what to say except senseless, irrational, sheer evil that would open fire on children and be so deeply to pretend, so deeply deceived to pretend the day before in writing to be a good person. We might wonder at such times if such a person is possessed by the devil. The better answer, I think, is to say that such a person, like the devil himself, has become deeply enslaved to his own indwelling sin and evil. The deep anti-God, anti-Christ impulse that is in the devil himself is the same anti-God, anti-Christ impulse in all sinners, but for God's common and saving grace. It's called sin. And left unchecked, it will devolve into senseless anti-God evil and ultimate slavery, which relates to the passage this morning. Maybe you heard that as John read it. As the back and forth between Jesus and these Jews escalates, let's go first to where the dialogue ends up in verses 44 to 47. I had John not read 44 to 47 so we could start there right here at the beginning. Jesus says, "You are of your father the devil, and your will is to do your father's desires. He was a murderer from the beginning and does not stand in the truth because there's no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks out of his own character, for he is a liar and the father of lies. But because I tell you the truth, you do not believe me. Which one of you convicts me of sin? If I tell the truth, why do you not believe me? Whoever is of God," here's the words of God, "the reason why you do not hear them is that you are not of God." Last week, Jonathan said, "Wait till you hear what Jesus says next Sunday." I want to make sure we're on the same page. I checked with him. He was talking about verse 44. "You are of your father, the devil." Similar, not as provocative, but same concept in verse 47. "The reason why you do not hear my words," Jesus says, "is that you are not of God." So that's where this whole thing is going. This dialogue escalates or devolves quickly in verses 31 to 47. But look where it begins. Here's verse 30. It's amazing where this thing begins. Verse 30, Jesus was saying these things, which we saw the last couple weeks in verses 12 to 29. He's saying these things, and many believed in him. So verse 31, so Jesus said to the Jews who had believed in him. That's our audience this morning. Those who had believed, at least believed until then, until that point. They started to believe. They liked the first few things they heard. But the question for us this morning is whether we will keep believing as Jesus keeps speaking. Many of them have fickle faith. We've already seen this in the gospel. This is not the first time. Should not be a surprise. Chapter 2, verses 23 to 25, all of chapter 6. Jesus has confronted fickle faith before. And isn't Jesus' instinct with a crowd marvelous? We just sang about how marvelous Jesus is. A crowd gathers, and Jesus doesn't think, wow, this is thrilling. We got something good going here. Let's lower the bar so we can keep everybody in the room and have more people. What's Jesus' instinct with a crowd? There's a crowd, so all of them can't be real. I need to raise the bar, whittle down the crowd, narrow it down to genuine believers, to true disciples. Jesus doesn't cater to fickle faith. He challenges fickle faith. If they stay fickle, they ruin the movement. But if you challenge fickle faith, some go away, but some stay. They remain. They abide. They hang on. They hold fast to Jesus. And they show themselves to be true disciples. That's the issue this morning. I mean, maybe this is a place to pause and to ask, What's the temptation for you? Like for those that Jesus is dealing with in John chapter 8. If you're going to go somewhere else, where would it be? For Jesus' audience, the issue seems to be their Jewishness. They mention twice that they're offspring of Abraham, verse 33, again, verse 39. Now, I know that very few, if any, in the room this morning are counting the cost of losing your Jewishness by staying with Jesus. But we're in St. Paul. There might be some. I'm not assuming none. So you may think, oh, well, these listeners in John chapter 8 are experiencing the kind of pressure that's foreign to me. Well, maybe not. Social appeal is powerful. Community pressure is real. And that might be the challenge for you this morning. That's the challenge for these Jews in John 8. Social pressure. Thinking, if I stay with Jesus, my Jewish friends and family aren't going to like it. I get pressure for that. Maybe your people. Who are your people? Are they secular to the core? Could be Muslim. Could be Buddhist. Could just be unbelieving American conservatives or progressives or professing Christians who frankly are pretty thin and fickle in their faith. Whatever level of interest you enter a church here this morning, interest in Jesus, what group tempts you not to believe and stay with Jesus? You know we all have our groups, right? For some people, the group is my sense of what's mainstream, my own sense of what's trending. And the other people who also have this sense of what's mainstream and trending, we're a group together, and there's social pressure with that. And there's others who say, well, my group is not mainstream. I'm marginal. I'm countercultural. And so we tell ourselves, I'm against the group. And you gather in droves with all the other people who are against the mainstream. We all have our groups. You have your group. What group is in you? What group has its claws in you that would tempt you to not stay with Jesus? We need to know our groups this morning. And the main point for us is that those who are of God stay with Jesus. That's our main point. It's my prayer for you, for me, that we would stay with Jesus. Those who are of God bear with his word. Not just the easy stuff and the stuff we like, all of his word. And no matter how uncomfortable his words get, his words find a place, John says, find a place in those who are of God, and Jesus then bears fruit through them. So the main claim in this passage, look at verses 31 and 32. That's the main claim. Then the rest of these verses are going to flesh that out. They'll go back and forth. They're arguing with parts of that. They're trying to divert Jesus. He's coming back to the main thing. But verses 31 and 32 is the main point. Look there. So Jesus says to the Jews who had believed, and there it is, they had believed in him, if you abide, it's an old English word, means stay. If you stay in my word, you are truly my disciples, and you will know the truth. That is, the truth about who Jesus is, which he's talking about in John 8. You'll know the truth, and that truth will set you free. So Jesus makes this claim, verses 31 and 32, and they go back and forth. And then in verse 47, we find that at bottom, to stay with Jesus shows whether one is of God or not of God. That's what's at stake in staying with Jesus. So that's how I'd like to frame it here this morning for us in that very personal way. And I take it that this room is filled with people who have believed in Jesus. But the emphasis this morning isn't on whether you have believed in the past, The emphasis is on staying, on remaining, on abiding, on holding fast. And for those in the room this morning who would say, I haven't yet believed in Jesus. I'm in a church on a Sunday morning for whatever reason. Just walked in the doors or somebody invited me here. You get an inside look in the next few minutes about what Christian faith is. Christian faith is not a past belief. It's not a momentary belief. It is an abiding belief. It's a belief that endures, a belief that persists, a belief that stays with Jesus and keeps believing in him, even as life gets hard, even if his words get uncomfortable. So here's how I'll ask the question here this morning to get at the three main parts of this text. Maybe you got this question, and if you don't, hope you'll adopt this question for the next few minutes. We're going to ask, how do I know if I'm of God or not? How do I know if my belief that I have at this moment, I've had till this moment, how do I know if this belief is real? How do I know that I will abide, that I'll stay with him? And the realities of these verses might make us draw up a couple columns. I'm going to come back to this at the end. We're working on two columns here that's beneath these three questions. There's this bottom line reality. There's an of God column, and there's a not of God column. And Jesus makes very clear in the dialogue the various levels of life, of faith, of remaining, of freedom that are part of being of God or being not of God. And we'll finish with that. Here's our three questions. Three questions to confirm whether you are of God. Number one, are you getting free from sin and enjoying it? Not enjoying sin, enjoying being free from sin. I mean, in theory, you could be free from sin and be really miserable about it. But Jesus talks about being set free and enjoying that freedom. And we love that word freedom in America, do we not? It's deep in the American DNA. It can be hard to read a Bible text about freedom and not think in American categories solely. For those who are raised in America, socialized here. Verse 32, there's this main claim. You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. But the question to ask about any freedom is free from what and free for what? You need to know that about a freedom to know what it is. What are you free from in this freedom, and what are you free for in the freedom that's being spoken about? And we get a piece of that in verses 31 to 34. Look at verse 31. If you abide, if you stay in my word, you are truly my disciples, and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. They answered him, we are offspring of Abraham and have never been enslaved to anyone. How is it that you say you will become free? Jesus answered them, truly, truly, I say to you, everyone who practices sin is a slave to sin. Jesus offers them freedom. And instead of hearing the offer for freedom, they hear that he's implying that they're presently enslaved and take offense to that. And they retreat to their sense of belonging, to their ethnic status. We're offspring of Abraham. We have never been enslaved, which, of course, is ridiculous. Have you ever heard of Egypt? Have you heard of the Philistines? Have you heard of Assyria? Have you heard of Babylon, Persia, Greece, Rome? There is hardly anyone in the ancient world that the offspring of Abraham were not enslaved to. This is senseless. It's a diversion. Jesus could go right along with the diversion and do a Twitter fight with them. But he doesn't take the bait. He's going to just brush that to the side, go back to the main point. Everyone who practices sin is a slave to sin. Freedom from sin is the freedom from that Jesus is offering in this text. What about the freedom for? What's it for? This is important. Sometimes we don't get beyond the from. We don't get to the for. Free for what? Now look at verses 38 to 41. He says, I speak of what I have seen with my Father, and you do. All right, he's talking about doing now. And you do what you have heard from your father. They answered him, Abraham is our father. Jesus said to them, if you were Abraham's children, you would be doing the works Abraham did. But now you seek to kill me, a man who has told you the truth that I heard from God. This is not what Abraham did. You are doing the works your father did. So doing matters. Last Sunday, Jonathan warned us of a do, have, be mentality. You do first to have so you can be. And he said, have a be, have, do mentality. First be and belong to Jesus. Have him, and then evidence that in your doing. What Jonathan did not say is that your doing doesn't matter. Doing matters. That's in the equation. It's in the right place. So the first question here this morning is about the doing. It has a place. The unbelieving, in John 8, show that they do not have faith and do not belong to God by what they do. And so too, those of God who have faith in Jesus get free from sin and enjoy the freedom of doing. For others' good, to see others' needs, meet others' needs, do good in the world. Get our doing, our good works in the right place. Our life matters. Your doing matters. And freedom from sin doesn't mean that you just sit around and watch clean videos all the time. But in that freedom, love others and seek to do good for others. But don't miss the greatness of Jesus in this first question. Jesus is the one who sets free, for real. He's the one who gives freedom from sin, freedom to actually do good, to love others, to get past the smallness of ourself, to see others' needs, take initiative, expend effort, and experience the joy and the reward of doing others good in Jesus' name. And now, we'll see in verse 36 that it is not only sons who are free, but the Son, the singular Son, the unique Son who sets them free. So that leads to our second question. Does Jesus' word find place in you? And finding place, that's the language of John 8. Does Jesus' word find place in you? And now we come to this main focus on abiding or staying with Jesus. It is one thing to believe in a moment or believe in the past or believe initially, the first few things we hear about Jesus, and have fickle faith. It's another thing to keep believing. Stay with him, remain with him in life's challenges, that Jesus' words find a place in us. They don't just come through and go out. They find a place. They rest. They stay. They remain. So Jesus first, this is maybe the most important thing to observe in this text. If you can put your finger on it in verse 31 and 35. He first mentions abiding or remaining in verse 31, as we've seen. But then he comes back to this precisely in verse 35, and it's easy to miss because our word changes in English. It's the same word in the original. Don't let that change of wording throw you off the track here. Verse 31 says abide. Verse 35 says remain. Same word. He's talking about the same thing. He's picking up in verse 35 on what he said in verse 31. Look at verse 35 to 37. The slave does not remain, there it is, does not abide, does not stay in the house forever. The Son remains forever. If the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed. I know that you are offspring of Abraham, yet you seek to kill me because my word finds no place in you. So, Jesus, to a room full of people who have believed so far, says, if you don't remain with me, if you don't stay with me, you're a slave. You show yourself to still be enslaved. Slaves come into a household for a time, then they go. They don't stay. They're not really part of the family. They're temporary members of the household. Eventually they leave. But the sons stay. They abide. The sons remain with Jesus. The word to us this morning is this. If you stay with Jesus, if his word finds place in you, if you remain by faith in the house with him, you show yourself to be sons and daughters, to be true disciples. And those who seem to believe but do not stay reveal their ongoing slavery to sin. Over the years at City's Church, we have often sung together that hymn, "He Will Hold Me Fast." And I think one of the most painful things, probably the most painful thing in our life as a church, these 10 plus years, has been to see those who have sung that with us and walked away, slowly walked away, drifted away. They sang with it. We sang together, "He will hold me fast." They didn't hold him fast. And so we ask, did he hold them fast? Doesn't look like he held them fast. They sang with us. What does it mean when we sing, "He will hold me fast"? Now, based on John chapter 8 and the complementary things that this same apostle has to say in the book of 1 John and the book of Hebrews, where we were a couple years ago, here's how I sing, "He will hold me fast." Hope you'll sing it like this as well. As I stay with Jesus, this is the spirit, the attitude of my heart as I sing, "He will hold me fast." As I stay with Jesus, as I hold him fast, he holds me fast. And it's not that my holding him fast causes him to hold me fast. It's the other way around. The way his holding me fast is manifest, in part, is through my ongoing holding him fast, through the help of his Spirit. From my finite, limited perspective, I don't know for sure what the future holds. I don't know if I'll hold him fast. If I give in to sin and walk away from him and don't stay in him, it'll be shown he's not holding me fast. But if I do hold him fast, day by day. You hold him fast on a daily basis. You don't take week-long, month-long vacations from holding him fast and expect to come back and hold him fast. If he holds you fast, it will be seen by holding on to him day after day, not on your own, not by yourself, empowered by your Spirit, in a community of believers, as you stay with him, and it is shown to your soul and the world that he's holding you fast. Something else we can say in these verses about his holding us fast, our remaining in him, staying with him, having his word take, what does that mean? Having his word take place in us. And this is one of the most shocking things Jesus says. I mean, that your father's the devil, that's shocking to these Jews. Here's something else, really shocking to them. He doesn't only call them to believe his words and abide in his words, but he says in verse 42, if God were your father, you would love me. Love me. These people who are manifesting enough hate to seek to kill him, he says, you would show God your Father if you would love me. So perhaps the question that would help clarify for you this morning where you're at with Jesus is, do you love him? Do you love what you see? Are you drawn to him by the power of his Spirit? Do you want more of him? Which leads us then to this third and final question. We'll say more about that in just a minute. Can you bear to hear the words of Jesus? Can you bear to hear the words of Jesus? Now, in a sense, we've kind of worked from the outside in, or from the top down to the bottom with these three questions. And we started with freedom, and freedom from sin, and freedom for doing good for others, kind of at the outside. We moved in to the staying with Jesus, remaining with him, and now we come all the way to the bottom, come all the way to the core. How do you hear him? Can you bear with his words? That's why it's so important what words we let in through these holes in the sides of our heads. What do we let find place and grow in us? What do we nurture with our clicks, with where we take our ears to hear intentional words? You can withstand all sorts of things flying by you when you haven't chosen to listen to them with joy. But when you click, I want to hear more of that. I want to hear more of that. I want to go there. I want to hear more of that. When you choose what you hear, it is a powerful shaping influence on the soul. Believing in Jesus, hearing his words with faith, is what's at issue at the bottom here. Believing his words is what he said in John 8, that he comes from God, that he shares in God's own identity, that even as he stands before us as fully human, he's God. And not just believing some about him. That's the issue with the Jews in John 8. They believe some about him. There's some things they like. But they're not ready to be with him all the way, to stay with him through all the claims. There are some things he's going to say that aren't convenient and aren't socially acceptable for them. But believing all of what Jesus says about himself, even and especially when it's at odds with the social group that matters most to us, evidences true belief, enduring belief in the heart. Let's finish here with verses 42 and 43. Verse 42, Jesus said to them, if God were your father, you would love me. For, there's key claims here, I came from God, and I am here. I came not of my own accord, but he sent me. Why do you not understand what I say? It is because you cannot bear to hear my word. Jesus says to them, I came not of my own accord. Literally, Not from myself I have come. He speaks as man, but as no mere man. Jesus is no mere man putting himself forward for their faith, for their love, for their abiding. No, this man is sent by God. He is God the Son, sent by God the Father. To hear Jesus and believe Jesus is to hear the one sent by God to speak for God, who is God himself. To hear the word of Jesus is to hear the word of God. To believe what Jesus says about himself and everything else is to believe what God himself says and everything else. So in this sermon, we've worked backwards here in a sense. We started with true freedom, and we came back to staying with Jesus. And then at the bottom, at the center is, how do you respond to his words, his claims about himself? How do you respond to the voice of Jesus? I told you I'd give you a chart here at the end because this text speaks in these different categories. And there's a few key pairs that run back and forth. So here's the chart. If you like charts, now you can capture it. If you don't like charts, that's fine. Hopefully there's clarity for you as we close. There is an of God column, and there is a not of God column. In the not of God column is false disciples. And Jesus calls them sons of the devil. Not literal offspring of the devil, but they're son-like in that they do what he does. So, false disciples. And they, next line, cannot bear to hear Jesus' words. They might bear with some of them. They might like some of them. Some of his teaching they like. But the issue is all of it. All of Jesus' teaching. They cannot bear to hear his words. Next, those words find no place in them. So, next line, they are enslaved to sin. And finally, they do the works of the devil. No matter how good the works look for a little bit. Those enslaved to sin do the works of the devil. That's column not of God. How about of God column? The true disciples hear his words, receive them all, and they believe them and they stay in them, no matter how socially unacceptable to their chosen group among the many groups. And they are set free from sin by his words, and set free, last line, to do the works of God, to make Jesus known, to meet others' needs in Jesus' name. One last word here as we close. For those with particularly tender consciences. And maybe you're really struggling this morning, like unusually struggling with the question of, am I of God or not? It's like, whoa. Verse 47 and 48 came along and the smoke cleared and Jesus went down to the rock bottom of you're of God or not. If you're wrestling with that question this morning, if that feels especially heavy to you, I have good news for you. If you are genuinely concerned about that, if you are genuinely asking, am I of God or not? That is typically a first indicator that you are of God. Those who are not of God don't spend a lot of time worrying about it. The very fact that that concerns you, that at least that question finds place in you, means thank God that you're concerned. And lean into Jesus. Don't ignore it. Don't push it under the rug. Don't go away. I'd love to pray afterwards. Take that concern and lean into Jesus in it. And in it, he's confirming, perhaps, that you are of him. At the end of the day, the question for you and the question for everyone in this room is, what do you do with Jesus? There's no going around Jesus to try to find out, am I of God or not? Am I chosen or not? You can't go back there. You can't peek behind that curtain. The only way to know is, what do you do with Jesus? What do you think about him? Do you hear him? Do you receive his word with welcome? Do you love him? Do you want to honor him with your life? What you do with Jesus shows whether you are of God or not of God. So here's my prayer for you and for Cities Church, that those who have believed until now would keep hearing Jesus, even and especially when it's uncomfortable and we don't like what he says at first because we think of other people in our lives who aren't going to like it. And that you would love him and stay with him through life's trials. You're in them right now, or they're coming. And there will be times where it won't be easy to stay. And then finally, that you would enjoy, by the power of the Spirit, freedom from sin increasingly. And in that freedom from sin, freedom to do others good. Take some initiative, give some effort to do good for those in need. And so we come to this table. And this is a table for those who have been set free and those who are being set free. And there's a little measure in taking, welcoming, and being set free as we eat in faith week by week. Set free by the Son, free from sin, free for enjoying him and for expressing that love to do good to others. This is a table of true freedom. It celebrates Jesus' victory over death and our liberation from sins by his once for all offering of himself at the cross. And at this table, we taste him. We see that he's good. True freedom is from sin and from the misery of sin. And true freedom stays in Jesus as we do at this table and loves him. It's a meal for the members of Cities Church. But if you're with us here this morning and you'd say, I love him. I want him. I receive his word. I'm staying in him. Then we'd have you eat with us. The pastors will come. We'll pass around the bread. His body is the true bread. Let us serve you.